Welcome back to Steve Keen and Friends. I'm Tyrone Keynes, and we have our normal main guest, Professor Steve Keen, with us. And the all-watching eye is in the background, Daniel Sanderson, doing the engineering today for the show. Steve, how you doing?
Very well, mate. I've rather more time to get over the morning than you guys have had. At 9 o'clock in Vancouver, and it's 5 o'clock here in London.
Nice. So I was thinking today we can play around with Minsky. Obviously, that's something I love to do, and
you do it very well.
Yeah, and you made the program, so this should be an easy episode for you. I think we'll do your model, which is the Keen-Minsky model, and we'll try to attach, I know some viewers have probably heard the term Godly table, which is an accounting table. We'll try to attach that to the growth cycle model and, just give a little tutorial, show everybody what Minsky's like. I'll let you do most of the talking, and I'll build the model as you talk, and we'll kind of just go from there and see what happens. We'll try to leave enough room if anybody has questions at the end pertaining to the model or anything economics for Steve. We can do that at the end.
Okay, we better share your screen, Ty.
We are going to share the screen here.
There we go. Okay, there we go. That's the familiar background. All right. Okay. Well, let's start talking Minsky. So you'll just build while I talk, will you?
Yeah, I'll just start it off at capital in the cycle part of the model, and you just talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, the funny thing is, actually, I built a model of Minsky's finality hypothesis by taking Goodwin's model of cyclical growth, which you wrote back in 1967, and then adding to it a debt section. So if you build the Goodwin model, which you get a cyclical system coming out of it, but you build it the assumption that Goodwin made make his function was that capitalists invest all their profits and workers spend all their wages. And quite a assumption of what's called Koleskian, but it's unrealistic. My perspective was that capitalists borrow more than they in profits during a boom, less than they make during a slump, and that gives you a cyclical process for debt levels as well. So that was the simple foundational inspiration for it. So and the funny thing was, I built it. I had corresponded with Richard Goodwin, and Richard Goodwin worked at the same university as Simon Minsky, and they didn't get on because he literally, when described, sailed in, which itself is a bit disparaging, sailed in from some other institution or swanned in, something of that. I think it's either sailed or swanned. And the reason that Goodwin didn't click with him is partially personal. Even Minsky's wife described him as a four-letter word. I won't repeat here. She overheard a couple of people complaining about Minsky's personality after he died. And then he said, oh, look, he was a four-letter word, but I loved him. So a bit of a difficult human being. Goodwin, on the other hand, was always a very magnanimous and quite lovable human being, and had a lot of friends as a result of that. But he also, and this is quite curious, Goodwin regarded the monetary system as unimportant. And the reason was of empirical research he and money during using data between World War I and World War II, and he found no impact at all, and that was actually his PhD thesis. But funnily enough, in the same letter where he told me that he'd been not doing work on the monetary side of the economy, he also told me that his grandfather was who went bankrupt during the Great Depression and took the family fortune down because he insisted on repaying his depositors. So he lived through the experience, this sort of personal loss, but he regarded money as unimportant, which is quite weird. So anyway, I ignored his advice of not to include the financial sector, and then went on to do it. We corresponded over a paper I wrote critiquing the Hicks-Harrod-Hansen data model. She agreed with criticism of. I'll just actually doing your very model there, tiled through what you're putting up on screen. This relates to Minsky. So the basic idea of any model, neoclassical or Keynesian, in this case, is that output is driven by capital stock. The neoclassicals use what they call a Cobb-Douglas production to say that output is a function of both labour and they'll raise us all the time without realising its weaknesses. I'm going to talk about that at a later stage. Post-Keynesians use something which is derived, and that says that when you look at the term data for employment, for capital stock and the long-term data for output, you almost find that the capital stock at some point in time 4 times the valuation of the output at the same time, and that applies fairly consistently regardless of which country you look at. Different countries have different ratios. The average tends to be about 3. But if you look at the capital stock and divide it by 3, in most countries, exactly what the output is. Bit of the expression that Ty's put together there. That. Okay, the dog is gone. Okay.
I'm going to mute
So
myself.
what we have, first of all, is saying, you better, with the dog barking like that in the background, you better. Okay. So this is, first of all, showing that capital is a, so what Ty is starting with is, first of all, is capital starts at 300 units, and then you divide that. Okay, can you hit the recalculate key just to show people that? Can you click on the recalculate key? Yeah. Okay. So notice if you take a look at the K0, the blue box, which is feeding into the bottom, that was 300, and the K out the other side was 0. Once on the calculate key, K now at capital at this point in time became 300, and because the Kai had said the ratio of capital output was 3, then the output 100 units GP for 300 units of capital. Now what Kai is doing is dividing output by the output to labor ratio. So this is called labor productivity, but I don't like that term. I'll discuss why. We'll come back to it at some point. Let's call it productivity for now. So if you say each worker produces 1 unit of output, then you divide output by labor productivity and you get how many workers you need to hire, and that is therefore workers. So again, to the same story, Ty, just click on recalculate key when and the now. Oh, okay. That's just we have units control built into the model, but it's not vital to use it. So it'll give you a message without actually stopping the program from running.
Yeah.
But that was initially saying we haven't defined labor units properly.
Yeah. So there is actually, I guess it's not bringing up the context menu when I'm typing in the variables, is it? Because I can't see where I put in the units and stuff.
You must be doing those off screen.
Yeah, for some, I'm not.
See if you can bring up the.
Yeah, just give me a second here.
Right click on one of them and choose edit and see if you can bring up the window. because you should be able to. Let's see, we're not seeing that window either. That's okay. I mean, what should be happening, this is just an issue of software. So when you type something canvas on Minsky, it first of all interprets that as a text string. Then it lets you decide whether that is a variable, parameter, etc., and give it the relevant. Where's it gone, Ty? I've lost the screen for a moment. There we go. Okay, there it is. So that's saying n, which is standing for the call. Currently been shown as a flow. It's actually an integral block, and giving an initial value of. Maybe you should bring up the parameter instead. Type. Just click there, and you've got all your initial n underscore 0, or. Let's see. Bring up the main window again.
Yeah, it's a little difficult here to switch screens, and that was just I'll bring it back up in a second.
Yeah, okay. You share the entire screen rather than just a window. That's a good idea. Looking pretty busy. Hang on. Oh, there's the infinite regress. Now just minimize the and go back.
Is it, minimize
the view now.
Yeah, no, is this showing now the context?
It's showing infinite regress on the screen restream. So just minimize restream, minimize your browser. Then you should find that there we go.
Okay.
Behind, or where's Minsky?
Do you see what do you see?
You should be able to get there. At the moment, just next screen.
Okay. Yeah.
And a whining dog.
Yeah, this isn't going to work. So,
screen. I haven't got a whining dog. Hang on, because I managed to share mine quite successfully.
Yeah, actually, you can share your screen.
And you can stop your dog. So I'm bringing up my Minsky at the moment, see where it's got to. Sorry, boys and girls, we're just having a bit of a technical hassle here. Here's my Minsky, and I'll see if I can share my screen. So where's the option for that? I'll minimize the screen a bit. And where is share screen here? You're alone with the dog. They can't do anything about it. Fair enough. Yeah, down the bottom, share screen. Okay, so share screen, and share this screen, and minimize that view. And can you now see my Minsky window?
Yes, there we go.
Okay, right. Well, so I'll start talking here, and you interrupt and talk. Okay. So, I'll actually start from output, because that's probably the simplest element to bring in. So I'm typing Y for output, and now Minsky brings up, now what's Y? Well, I'm just going to say Y is just Y, GDP. I put in so there's GDP, and I'll zoom in a bit. You can use the scroll bars to zoom in and out. So I'm going to divide that by, I'll call it LP for labor productivity. Oh, by the way, at the moment there's a bug, and the bug that when you type on the canvas in Minsky automatically thinks you're typing in a variable, which is good. But at the moment, the first character gets lost. I've got to fix that bug up. be fixed up in the next beta release. This is LP. Pardon me, I'm not going to call it LP. I'm going to put myself here. I'm going to bring in an integral operator, and that's if you use to typical system dynamics, this is the bathtub into which stuff flow. If you're a mathematician, this is an integral block. And so the input at the top is what's being integrated, and then what's down below, with the input at the bottom, is the initial condition. So call this and call this LP for labor productivity. I'll use lowercase and give an initial value of LP underscore 0 at a value of 1. So define it. I'll call this a parameter at a value of 1. I'm not going to bother putting in ranges just yet. So this is initial value of labor productivity is 1. And if I hit the recalculate key, you'll see that the LP there is changed from 0 to 1. So we now have divided by output divided by labor productivity is going to be the number of workers that are hired. So I'm going to call this L for labor. And again, I've got to type the character twice. The current version. This is a bug in the beta, so people wouldn't actually be facing this. So this is labor. So now I therefore have pardon me, my little mistake. I know that's correct. Oh, actually, no, I've stuffed up completely, haven't I? Okay, let's fix it up. It's always good to make mistakes. So what I've got here is labor productivity, and I want to say labor productivity grows at a particular rate. So I now take a copy of the item LP. I can say there's labor productivity, and I'll call it, I'm going to multiply that by a growth rate, which I'm going to call LP underscore curly brackets GR for growth rate. And that's going to be my parameter. And I'm going to give it a value of, say, growing at 1.5% per annum. I now have labor productivity growth rate multiplied by labor productivity, pardon me, integrated is labor productivity. And just to illustrate that, let's just graph it. I'll take a copy of LP now. This is the only thing that's been defined in the model so far. And whack it over here, put on a graph, and then attach LP to the graph and hit run. And you get exponential growth. It'll take a while before you get any obvious curvature there. But that's the basic idea of building even a simple differential equation in Minsky. Let's just actually take a look at the equation tab as well. And I don't know if that's going to be very visible on people's screens. And in this version of Minsky, so I can't relocate it. But you'll see we've got DDT of LP is LP multiplied by LP growth rate. That's what's actually being built there as a dynamic model. So I'll leave that sitting there. Let's move that down a bit. So I've now got labor productivity. And now if I divide output by labor productivity, I get how many workers are hired. Now, again, this is going to turn out to be 0 because I've got nothing coming in from output itself so far. But that's the beginning of starting to define a model. So I've got labor productivity there. Now, when I've got labor productivity, if I divide that by population, I'm going to have the employment rate. So I need another integral block. So I can click here, bring this down here, right click and edit that and choose that to be N for population. I won't give any units to it. So I'm going to have population growth as well. So I'm going to take a copy of N. And I'm going to multiply it by a population growth rate. So it's called N underscore curly brackets GR growth rate. Oh, I didn't type a curly bracket there, I typed a square. So I've got to go back and edit that. Okay, and that's going to be a parameter. And let's say that's 2% per year, which is far higher, but that'll do for an initial model. So the number of the population level times the growth rate multiplied together and added to the initial population is the current population. Now I haven't actually defined N0 yet, so that's if I hit the recalculate key, I'm still going to get 0, and if I hit the run key, nothing changes in N. So I've got to add an initial value, so I'll call this N underscore 0 for the initial population, and let's say that's 100 I now feed that into the bottom here. Then I hit recalculate, and now n becomes 100 itself. And you hit the run key, and you can see the number of the population level running. That'd be like 100 million people, that sort of level. You use small numbers to make things work initially, but rather than being 818 people, think of it 118 million people. You'd set your units up to make that better if you're doing a fully completed model. So there I have the number of people who are employed, and if I divide that, then I have the employment rate. I bring n up here, type a divide by key, attach L to the top and N to the bottom, and I'm going to call this \lambda, the Greek letter, the English way of saying the Greek letter lambda, and Minsky actually converts that into the symbol lambda. So there's one thing no other program does in the whole system dynamic space. It actually lets you type Greek and other characters in the keyboard, and your document ends up having Greek letters to it. No other program supports. So there's the employment rate.
Steve, you can export all your LaTeX, those equations that you showed. You can export them right out of Minsky into your LaTeX editor to avoid doing all the LaTeX coding. So you can,
that's right.
You can
choose LaTeX there. I'll just call this. Let's see. Wherever I'm working at the moment, I'll call this. Okay, canvas.txt will do. Well, let's now take a look at canvas.txt and show that. Just using a text editor, and that's what Minsky's producing for you. So that is obviously to go into a strict LaTeX editor, but you can also cut and paste that and paste it into Word. So if I take, for example, let's see this one here, frac blah blah blah, get my my curly brackets right. If I now bring up math type and I paste that in, then I get a bit of formatting in there, but there is your differential equation for the rate of growth of population.
Yeah,
so that's one of
that's unique to Minsky out of all the system dynamic programs. Very, very cool stuff.
Which is crazy. I would have, you think they do it over time, but often people don't actually understand this stuff. They learn system dynamic. They don't know other approaches. So this one just doesn't get done. I'm also going to, by the way, this is getting a bit cluttered up here. So I'm going to take a copy of this. Pardon me, just move Y out of the way. Take a copy I'm going to cut that, paste it down here. Paste it down here. And just take a copy of LP and use that up here so I don't clutter the diagram too much, because the actual flow chart's going to be up here. So labour productivity is being defined down here. Population is defined down here. We've now got lambda. And now I want to bring in a Phillips curve. I'm going to take a copy of lambda. Same sort of story, whack it down here. I was going to delete this one while I build. And I'm going to subtract from that the level of where there is no wage change level. So the basic, the standard idea in the across the industry, whether you're neoclassical or post-Keynesian, people when they're modeling assume there's some level of employment that means there is no wage change. So I'm going to say that 60% of the 60% employment, 60% of the population having a job means that wages neither rise nor fall. So I then subtract the actual level from the zero level. I get whether employment's above or below the level of wages don't change. And now if I multiply this by a slope, that's a slope underscore, which means there's going to be a lowercase, and then the lambda. There's the slope, and let's make that that's a parameter as well, the slope of the Phillips curve, so to speak. Give that a value of 10, and I'll give myself a chance to make some changes to that by giving max, min, and other elements to it. And now if you multiply that by the gap between actual employment and the zero level, then you can call wage change, for this way W underscore curly bracket CH for change. And that's just going to be another variable determined by the model there. So there's the rate of change of wages. Again, that's going to be massively negative because I haven't got any employment there so far. So I can take a copy of wage change and now multiply that by the wages. So we now need wages as another integral block. So I bring this down, right click and edit this and call this W for wages. Define WO, initial level of wages, as say, again, I'll give a value of 1 to it. And that's another parameter. Give myself a bit of room. I'll give the room to go between 1 and 0.1 with the step size of 1. Let's make that 2. So if I choose a value that doesn't work that well, I can change it later. That if I use the arrow key now, if I press the arrow key up, the up arrow increases the value, the down arrow decreases it. So let's say it's 0.8. So there's starting to define your wage change function. I now take a copy of wage and multiply it by wage change and integrate the rate of change of wages, and that becomes the wage level. So we've now defined wages in the system. And once you've got wages, the rest of it all sort of falls together very, very easily. So there's your Phillips curve. There's wage change multiplied by the current wage level, integrated and added to the initial wage is the current wage. I'll hit the recalc key and we'll see what that comes out at. So it's still 800. That's the initial value. So now I want to multiply wages. I get the wage bill. And I'll call this, just use capital W for that. This is what we can now put into a godly table at some point. So labor, the number of workers with a job multiplied by the wage rate is the wage bill. Again, that's going to come out at 0 at the moment because I've got nothing feeding into Y over here. And now you then say, well, there's output. And in the simple Goodwin model, output minus wages is profits. So I just say take output minus wages, type a minus key. So subtract wages from output. I now have profit, and I'll call that \capital P I, which will give me the Greek capital P, and that's profit, gross profit. I'll call P underscore G for gross profit. We're going to make it net in a short while. And let's just grab all this stuff and just move it sideways for a second. Make a bit of space here. I want to complete the whole flow chart. So that's gross profits. And in the simple model that Goodwin built, all profit is invested. So I'm going to type I underscore G for gross investment here. So Goodwin simply said that all profit is invested. And that is therefore the rate of change of capital. So I now come over here. I want to bring in capital. So move this over slightly. And then another integral block, because investment is the rate of change of capital. Right click and edit this and call this K. Capital. Now I want an initial value of capital. The K underscore O. And I'll make it 400, so I get a level of unemployment initially coming out of this. So I'd say there's 400 units of capital stock. Let's give that a try. I'll give myself a bit of room again to move around. If I choose a bad value there, in terms of a value that just looks pretty silly. So now I have capital, and if I divide capital by the capital output ratio, and I'll use the Greek letter nu for that, or kappa, let's say kappa. Okay, it's kappa. The capital output. Well, let's say the value is 3. Again, give myself some room to move around if I choose a bad value. So you divide that by capital, and I've got to define what investment there. I'm just going to move out a bit. I've got a bit too large on the screen. Move the screen over a bit. There's gross investment. I now want to have depreciation coming out to give me net investment. By the way, this is a bug in the beta version. Notice that I'm stuck moving around everything. I can't select anything. If you use the beta and you have that hassle, press the shift key. It releases it. That's just a little bug with we've fixed up. We haven't actually written the code, haven't put the code yet into the code base. So there's gross investment. I now want to have depreciation. I'm going to take a copy of K, and I'm going to have depreciation \delta underscore K. This, by the way, something Goodwin forgot to include in his own model. Bit of a mistake there. I'll give it a value of 6%, which is roughly the measured level of depreciation, but give myself plenty of range so I can vary it if I need to. So delta K, which is the rate of depreciation, times K. You then subtract that, so a minus key, from gross investment. And that becomes net investment. So I underscore, I'll use the uppercase N for net. That's net investment. Whack this here. And then I can close the circle by taking a copy of net investment and pasting it over here and saying the integral of net investment is capital. And now let's hit the recalculate key and see what we get. And I haven't got K divided by kappa yet. I haven't done that so far. The type of divide by key. So K divided by capital output ratio. Now here's the bug, by the way. Notice I'm right inside. There we go. It worked. Sometimes the circle, that's now defined the whole model. Let's go back to normal scale. I was actually working on quite a lot of zooming there. Move it around a bit. So now we have, let's read through the values of the model as we go from one side to the other. So I've got capital stock starts at 400, divided by 3, calculate key, get an output of 133. And labour, that gives you 133 employees, which is too many. So I'm now going to reduce the value fee, bring it down to, say, 300. Let's try that first of all. 100, that's going to be full employment. That's too high. Let's go smaller again. I'm going down for a lower level still, 200. And that gives me 66.7 workers, higher to 67.7 million, let's say. That's a positive employment rate. So you're going to get, as a result of that, there's going to be positive change to wages. You can see the wage change down there is 0.6, which is quite a high level of increase in the wages. I'll just reduce that a bit by reducing the value of the slope function to see what we get. So I've got a 40% change in wages, which is still pretty high. So you have the change of wages, integrate that, you get the actual wage level, which is still 800. We're in initial conditions here. That means the wage bill is 53, output is 66.7. Therefore, there's gross profits. You subtract depreciation, which gives you net profits, and you've got investment going on. So we have a working model. And let's just actually now simulate that. So I'm going to take a copy of the employment rate, and I'm going to feed that through a percentage operator. So we see the percentage rate of employment, and I can call this backslash. I've just dropped my mouse, and my batteries have dropped out, I'm sure, so I'm going to be in great trouble. Putting it back together again. Hang on.
We are doing very well in today's show.
Are we?
Yes.
I just dropped a battery on the floor, mate. I've lost my mouse.
This is going to be our #1 rated show of all time. Huge.
Is it now? Okay. Well, you go. So backslash. What do I want to type? I've forgotten. Okay, lambda, and then make this up superscript %, and okay, click there. Okay, and I've stuffed that above, obviously. This is one working with a mouse I don't know how to use. This is actually going to delete that. Bloody hell! Oh, my keyboard. Damn it! My keyboard. The bloody thing has a you touch it in some ways and it turns into a numerical. My mouse pad on the laptop turns into a numerical keypad if I tap it the wrong way, and the bloody thing is tapped. I'm on my floor looking for the parts of my mouse that have fallen on the fucking floor. Pardon me, I'm allowed to use Australian here. And I'm looking for another battery because I lost one of the battery. What a joke, honestly. Pardon me, people. This is what happens when you do stuff live. Oh, dear. So I've got to find a battery on the floor. Damn. Hang on. can I turn this bloody numerical keypad? Okay, no, it's still there. Go away. Okay, I can now move stuff around. Let's just delete that. So, and I'm back on typing again, \lambda. And I'll call this superscript %. Okay. Attach that. I'm seriously hobbled here by not having my mouse working properly.
This is
going to work a graph in here. And
this is great, Steve.
Okay.
We are getting huge engagement from you being underneath the table instead of on top of it. This is great.
Okay, well, here you go. There's the cyclical model. Okay, so we've got the labour cycle going. Now, while I'm hand over to you for a sec, Ty, because we're going to go and add the Minsky model in there. So I'm going to stop sharing and find my effing battery. So back to you, and you can talk away while I'm crawling around on the floor trying to find my battery.
Well, okay. Well, Steve's going to be crawling around on the floor looking for his battery. I guess we're not going to attach a godly table to that model, but I'll just show. Well, how long are you going to be underneath the table?
Good question. Okay, so give me 2 minutes. Okay. It shouldn't have rolled that far. It's a small apartment, but I can't damn well see that this. I've got one of these batteries, and it's got two. If I can bring it up to the screen.
Yeah.
Two battery, and I can't find one of them. A AAA on the floor somewhere. So you chat away, and I'll continue fossicking around here until I find the bloody thing.
Perfect. What a great show, guys. If you have any questions, make sure you type them in the comments section on YouTube. And also if you're watching on Twitter, you can post your comments inside of the Twitter comment area.
Bloody hell. Grumble. Yeah. I'm looking at other. How does a battery disappear on the floor? Obviously it's messy. I'm an academic, but surely. You chat and I'll shut up.
Yeah. So we have a guest next week, Carrie King. He will be coming on to join us. Daniel will be hosting next week, so I can take care of my dog if that's an issue. And I apologize for my dog. He is a 10-month-old puppy, so he has zero manners. And there's Daniel. Daniel, we are having one of the best episodes of all time right now.
Yeah, I said that.
So
my wife and I, we have this thing. It's called a better you than me, right? Because I'm so I want to share the logic behind this. So it has never happened. I've never taken the dog for a dog walk and lost the dog. But I thought to myself, if I did lose the dog or the dog got lost, it would better be her than me. So this shows kind of the logic behind this scenario, right? And anytime something happens, I think, oh, it would probably be better that it was Ty that this happened to rather than me. I mean, I don't want to throw you under the bus, Ty, but I think to myself, man, I would feel horrible if I had done this, right? Now, how do you feel? Is this something that you can take responsibility for, or we just say it's just the way it works?
This is okay. So here's the thing. There's a backstory. My wife Marie told me about 3 days ago she has an appointment this morning, and I said, "Well, I'm hosting this week's show, and it's very important to me that I have no puppy dog beside me." And she told me, "Too bad. You're going to have to figure this out." And that's that. And, I've been together with her for a number of years now.
She's wonderful, I have to say. Yes.
She is wonderful. She is my better half. Yeah. So anyways, I had to just accept that I was going to have a dog this morning. My goal was and here he is. My goal was to impress Steve with my Minsky building skills and I've completely failed. In fact, he's had to build the model himself and talk about it. And really, there's no point in me even being here. So,
Ty.
how do I feel?
Oh, Ty.
How do I feel about it? Pretty bad.
You guys filled in while I was on the floor. That's okay. Okay, so let's go back to my screen again. Now that I've got my bloody mouse, I'll make sure I don't drop the damn thing again.
I have to say, I don't mind the strategy of Ty building the models, but you know, as some feedback, and I don't know what I want everybody else to weigh in here. When Steve's building the models and he's explaining everything as he's pulling it up, for me, I think that's better. I don't know. What do you think, Ty?
I completely disagree. I am
okay.
I am the Minsky building god.
Yes, we know that.
You are definitely. Yeah. I'm the amateur by comparison. I might have built the model, but I've built maybe you're better at using Minsky than I am.
I know. So I know how to bend wires well.
You do. You're definitely the wire bending guru and the complexity guru as well. So I'm just going to, now that I've got the attention again, are you seeing my screen once more?
Yes.
And okay, I'm now got my mouse and it's not going to fall off the table again. I can guarantee it. So there's my wages share as a percentage. And now I can graph that as well. Let's just grab that and drag it over here, let's say. Get out of the way, take a copy of omega, and then let's attach omega to this input. Hang on, to this input, so I run them against each other, and I'll actually edit this to one little trick that Ty gets very fancy with, at the angle that things are displayed at. I'll make this I think 270 degrees is the correct. Let's see, 270-degree rotation. There we go. And now I've got omega there, and I can now hit the recalculate and run. We now see the two variables here. And one important thing about this is, by the way, these two are not lagged. Okay, they are in the same. They're different because of phase differences. You don't have to have lags to get things being out of sync, which is something that people who work in discrete time seem to think is the case. So there's your cycles of the two, and I can now whack another graph in where I show the limit cycle effect of this model. So I now have another graph here and have omega coming in at the, let's make it red, on the red marker, and take a copy of lambda and attach that also to the red marker and hit the run. Then you get the cycle, the permanent cycle between employment and wages share. That's a piece of the Goodwin model. So that's the absolute basics there. And now we'll quickly show how you can bring a godly table in here, because at the moment I haven't got any genuine financial dynamics turning up here. But I do that by bringing in a godly table, and I'll put that into editor mode so you see the text on screen. And what I want to have now is workers, capitalists, and bankers, which is the whole idea of building Minsky, which will enable these to all be modeled together. So it's going to open up the godly table, and I'm now going to have, let's see, let's make that a bit larger. So I'm going to have loans, which are made to banks. I'm also going to bring in reserves there, and I'll show why. I hope we get a chance to show it in terms of the time we get to run the overall show. And I'm going to have firms here. I'm going to conflate and capitalists together, and then the bank's equity over here. And let's just say I haven't got initial loans in the system. Oh, well, I might see if I worry about that, but let's say pay wages. And wages are going to be a deduction from the firm's account and payment to the worker's account. So that's bringing in the stock flow consistency. Now what I have to have is workers consume. And I was going to have that say, so the C underscore W for consumption by workers. Need a minus before that, which I forgot to type. And now type C underscore W here. So that is balanced. And in the simple model, I've got where is my wages statement here? Okay, there's wages again, and I can simply say that consumption is equal to wages. I can make it more elaborate than that, but I'll do that to begin with. So I'm going to bring up the browser window, and here are the various elements that have been defined in the model so far. So I can now say, where's consumption by workers? Click on that, bring that down here, and consumption by workers is equal to wages. So hit the run key, and you've now got that being shown correctly. There's no dynamic turning up in the actual table yet because I haven't made it sophisticated enough, but I can now start including other elements like, for example, capitalists borrowing money to invest. So should I add, let's see, I've got to, let's see, let's just make that, I'll leave it at that, Scott.
Let's leave it at that. I'm going to share my screen and just show everybody, like, obviously you could do this yourself, but it takes a long time, but I'll show a more flushed out model just so everybody sees what Minsky can do, and then we'll go right to questions. So I'll just bring up one here, and just let me know if my
screen... my God.
Okay,
make
so
it full screen.
This is incomplete, but this is what you can do. This is, so Steve built a cycle model, and I've used that cycle model, his original work with debt, adding the third system state. He's also been doing work with adding an energy input to the production function, which I've put in. So you can really build out a full-scale model. It doesn't have to be simple. You can have multiple godly tables. So you can have, which Steve
was... full screen, Ty. Can you just bring your screen to full screen so we can see the full thing? Just
like
click
that?
No, I mean on the actual... hang on, pardon me, my mistake. No, I can do it myself. Pardon me. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm seeing full screen. My apologies.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. So as Steve was just starting to build his banking sector godly table, you can expand it to cover all the flows you want to explore. You can have your interlocking godly table. So I have one for the central bank, one for the treasury. I'm starting to work on the foreign sector, which is very incomplete, the firm sector, capitalist sector, and they all interlock, right? So one person's asset is another person's liability. So in each godly table, those are going to reverse. To do that in a traditional system dynamic program is very difficult, because what you're doing to create these godly tables in a normal program is you have to wire them all together, and then you're creating negative values for your liabilities, and then you have to convert them. So Minsky's biggest advantage is including these accounting tables named after Win Godley. And I'll stop sharing because we are running out of time and we want to go to some questions, and we got a lot today. Daniel, do you want to bring up some of those questions for us? Hey, Steve, are you residing in London?
That's right, I am, yeah. If you were around, let's get together, okay.
Great question. Besides his channel, are there any places where I can download Minsky projects, like how you can find a bunch of Tableau projects online?
Yes. On that front. Yeah, okay, you use that, Ty, yeah.
So on GitHub, and I don't have the URL off by heart, but there are a bunch of old models on there. And also you can go to Steve's Patreon and type in Minsky software, and all the posts where Steve has done models, you can download the models from there. We do need a repository sometime in the future to really organize that centrally. But GitHub, maybe, and Dan can find that online. There is, okay, next question. I don't want to push, but I keep wondering, will you guys be doing some stuff on degrowth anytime? I appreciate it's really a new field combined with post-Keynesian economics. So I don't want to hurry you guys.
Yeah,
What do you
I think that's absolutely vital. My basic perspective is that I can't see the private financial system surviving degrowth. You're going to have firms going bankrupt, capital values being wiped out, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to be absolutely reliant upon government money creation in that circumstance. A bit like in the Second World War, we didn't privately finance the Second World War, but plenty of private corporations made large amounts of money out of it by building armaments for the military, which were then either blown up or used to blow up military from other countries. So only a government can actually finance a war. And I think the same thing will apply with degrowth. Only a government can finance degrowth. And we could build that in Minsky, definitely.
Nice. Next question, Dan. Throw them up. My first question to Steve would be, which market is by far the biggest market?
Now, a little bit of background on this back and forth.
What sort of market?
Yeah, exactly. So basically in the chat, they were talking about Georgian. And I remember a couple episodes back, we talked about George and the economic, or the focus on land, right? On land. So if I start to equivocate the Georgian approach on land, and say Marx on labor, some of your work, Steve, on technology, and then energy as being also attributed to yourself and others. I think what he's referring to is which market is, he's using market in reference to these factors or these influences, and which is the largest. He later went in to say that the land values are maybe the reason for the bubbles, and the speculations that surround the finance sector artificially pump up the land values, and we get these
absolutely
natures of busting.
That's actually a big area for future use of Minsky, because for a long time Minsky was only built to handle financial assets, and a financial asset is a claim on somebody else. So the sum of all financial assets is necessarily zero. But land is a non-financial asset. A piece of land is an asset for the owner and not a liability for anybody else. So the value of the land goes in as an asset, and then the same value goes as part of the equity of the owner of the land. Of course, you can have a mortgage against the land, and that is a financial asset. But of course, then how much you pay for a house depends upon the amount of money you can borrow from a bank. So you get a tie between financial assets and non-financial assets and the valuation. So Minsky now supports modeling that concept. We have, if you create multiple equity columns in Minsky, you can also then choose an asset as an element as an equity as well, and that becomes a non-financial asset. We still haven't worked out how to work out initial conditions and other elements there, but it's feasible to model non-financial assets in Minsky, and I think that's extremely important as a way of working out the actual dynamics of the land market.
Nice. Dan, next question. Does every line in the Godley table correspond to an equation?
Good question, and the answer is no. Every line in the Godley table corresponds to two entries in two related system states in a Godley table. So the equations, every line actually corresponds to two equations, the two elements that are affected by a particular flow. So, for example, wages are a positive entry in the deposit account for workers, and a negative entry in the deposit account for firms. So very, very good question. The way the Godley table works is that the sum of all the entries is the rate of change of the relevant variable. So if I have debt is my variable, in the tables I've got loans for the amount of money owed in the aggregate to the banking sector, then the equation is the rate of change of loans is the symbolic sum in all the columns.
Perfect. Daniel, do we have any more? I do see a few.
That's
few
it.
other ones.
Really, or if you want to pull them up, that's fine. I didn't flag any other ones, but
I do see one here. I don't know if Steve can answer it. I don't quite understand it, so I'm actually interested. I'll bring it up here. ODL and velocity can be modeled in Minsky. I'm not too sure of that terminology. Does anybody know here?
ODL,
Steve,
not sure about either, but velocity, I presume ODL is a particular measure of the money supply. Yes, it can. So like in a simple Godly table model where I simply have a Godly table and nothing else, I often mechanically define velocity as a parameter. But when I have lots of flows between the elements, so you've got wages flow and profit flow and interest rate flows and so on, then you can define, and if you divide capital into two halves, so short-term capital for capitalists and then investment, you can actually use the sum of those flows and then divide those flows by the GDP, which also comes out of the model, to get velocity as a function in the model rather than an argument. So it's all up to you. Quite a bit of flexibility in how you put it together, but certainly handle monetary aggregates and change in the velocity and so on is a fundamental feature of Minsky.
Nice. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Dan, do you have anything there?
I do have one question about the degrowth. It is something that I'm very interested in too. And is it like a state economy and a military-like economy? I'm thinking in response to climate change here. Is there any academic work that basically frames or outlines something from an economic standpoint that very closely couples to like a military strategy? And where I'm going with this is what comes to mind is something that maybe comes out of West Point, or like leading universities that are focused on like the science of like wartime reaction or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
I haven't seen anything yet. There's certainly plenty of paper degrowth in general now, but my overall position is that degrowth is going to have to be so extreme and so sudden when we finally realize what the hell we're doing to the biosphere and what that therefore doing to the potential survivability of human civilization, that you're going to need a military enforcement of rationing and literally like a government level military approach to building what's necessary to reverse some of the damage we've done as much as we can, and then to rapidly change over from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel energy sources at a much diminished level of consumption. And you're going to have social conflict coming out of this, because the only people who can really afford to drop their consumption level are the wealthy, and they're not going to like it. And you're going to have to stop riots by the poor at the same time. So I just see a military environment coming out of this, and the question of how do you manage it and try to hold human civilization together in the process, because if you don't, you're not going to have a military society, you're going to have a Mad Max one, and I think that's worse.
Yeah, I've heard that from you on multiple occasions. The problem solving mind in my approach is to say, okay, well, what do we do about it? It's an astute observation. What do we do about it to be transparent and I guess promote, or what do we offer? Is there any ideas that can come out to try and sway the public and get the majority behind
I find myself going back. I mean, I know that in some circles, Winston Churchill's an extremely unpopular man for lots of reasons, but I find myself going back to his speeches when he took over from Chamberlain during the early days of the Second World War, and actually declared war. And he said, I can offer you nothing but blood, sweat, tears, and toil. And rather than saying it's going to be a positive, rosy future, he's saying it's going to be bleak and difficult, and you have to come along collectively. And he really, in that sense, did manage to get a collective acceptance of the need for a drastic drop in consumption, a focus on the war effort, enlistment, and so on. And I think we need a similar thing here. We've got to say this is going to be effing unpleasant, bloody awful. Our focus is on trying to hang on to society over the 10 to 20 year period that it might take to go from being on the unsustainable path we are now to one which is sustainable at a far lower level of consumption. And I think you've got to have somebody capable of saying it's going to be awful and you're going to like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we squandered that point in time where we could
50
have
years
had,
ago.
we could have had a slow decline that was not so painful. We squandered that. So there's still hope, but it's going to be a painful period between now and sustainability.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I think that's all
All right.
Good summary. Thanks, everybody.
I'll put my mouse to bed.
Yes. Just to let everybody know, we have Casey King next week as a guest. He's collaborated or has done things with Steve Keen in the past, so it's going to be a good show. He works in system dynamics or uses system dynamics, so I'm quite excited about it. So mark that on your calendars for next week. I'm Ty Keynes, Daniel Sanders, and Steve Keen signing off. See you later.
Bye.